Welcome, everybody, to the City of Farmers Branch study session for Tuesday, May 20th. Before we get started, let me just let everybody know Councilwoman Bennett will be about 30 minutes late today. She'll get here as soon as she can. So our first order of business are public comments, and I have a number of people that have signed up to speak for that, and I'm going to call them off in the order that I received them. The first one is Joseph Reigel. Let me just remind you before you get started, everybody, there's a 3-minute time limit for each citizen to speak with a reasonable limitation on speakers. All speakers shall comply with the city's rules of decorum and conduct for public hearings and citizen comments, which is available for review on the city's website, as well as on what you signed. The city will not tolerate unruly behavior, intimidation, disparaging or inflammatory remarks, or other attacks or insults that are not relevant to policy issues or other official business within the city's jurisdiction or authority. Violation of such rules that hinder, obstruct, interfere, or otherwise substantially disrupt the orderly conduct of the meeting may result in the loss of any time allocated to present such comments, or in the case of continued violations, will be ordered to leave the meeting. So thank you for adhering to that. And Mr. Reigel, you are up.
Okay. My name is Joseph Reigel. I live at 13647 Greystone Drive. Commemorative months serve as a way to raise awareness, celebrate cultural heritage, and promote important causes throughout the year. If the City Council decides that the mission of our city is to issue proclamations, I would like to suggest that we be all-inclusive and include the following: National Blood Donor Month, American Heart Month, Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month, National Library Lovers Month, Women's History Month, Slavery and Human Trafficking Prevention Month, Stalking Awareness Month, Developmental Disabilities Awareness Month, Endometriosis Awareness Month, Multiple Sclerosis Awareness Month, National Breast Implant Awareness Month, National Cerebral Palsy Awareness Month, National Kidney Month, National Colorectal Cancer Awareness Month, Autism Awareness Month, National Child Abuse Prevention Month, Sexual Assault Awareness Month. I've got 60 here that I was going to mention. There's hundreds out there. My favorite, though, is Older Americans Month, for various reasons. But the others I'm interested in because I've had prostate cancer, I've had kidney cancer, I've had lymphoma cancer twice, and there are people here in the city who can relate to many of the other proclamations I've mentioned. If the mission of our city is to issue proclamations, please include us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have Ellen Thielen. Next up is Marthann Daft.
Hello, I'm Marthann Daft, and I live on 2557 Brandywine Drive. I've been living here since 1959 in the same house. And at this particular point in time, I'm against the calendar of events, especially the June being Pride Month. Just feel like this is not something that we should be voting in. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Susan Davis.
Mr. Mayor, Councilwoman, and Councilmen, I understand we are considering following the federal calendar instead of following one written for the city of Farmers Branch. Why do you want to adapt the federal calendar? What benefit is it to our community? Does it benefit all, or does it benefit a minority group of people trying to gain power and strength that represent only 9.3% of the entire U.S. population? In Farmers Branch, that percentage is not even included in the demographics. It is to recognize Gay Pride Month or a Gay Pride Parade. I'm against it. There are other people and groups who paid their taxes and have lived in Farmers Branch many years, and like our own veterans, military, firemen, policemen, teachers, etc. These people should have the recognition and the parades. Flaunting sexuality on our streets should not be allowed. Prostitutes and Johns are picked up and some go to jail for flaunting and soliciting sexuality. I can't run or dance down the street baring my breasts like was done in Washington, D.C., without being stopped. What one does in one's own bedroom is that person's business. But others, especially our sweet, innocent children, shouldn't be subjected to this behavior. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Next up is John Campbell.
Good afternoon. I'm John Campbell, live at 1735 Whittington Place, unit number 2403. I would like for Farmers Branch to concentrate on things that unify us, not divide us. And I think that if we follow the state and the federal government in promoting things for particular groups, that leaves everybody else out. And only these groups have their day in the sun, but then everyone else, there's no unity in that. I was actually going to say that's my main point, that we should concentrate on what unites us. And I was going to point out that, you know, if we follow these things, you know, I looked at the proposed calendar, there's already a couple months that are doubled up. And the first speaker actually eloquently made the logical end of this, you know, with 60 or hundreds of things, you know, where is it going to end? I mean, how many flagpoles are we going to have to erect to honor all these different things, okay? That's a side note, but primarily, let's not pursue policies that divide us. Let's worry about running this nice town and have things that unify us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up is Terry Anderson.
Terry Anderson, 2644 Mount View, Farmers Branch. A sign of a mature adult is not requiring the approval of others. As a child, it is helpful to have the approval of one's parents. After reaching maturity, this is no longer required. Now that we are all adults in this room, none of us should need special recognition for who we are or what particular group we feel we belong to. Petitioning any government to award special recognition to a particular group is a divisive exercise. Dividing human beings into subgroups is a favorite tool of racists and tyrants. Racists use it to discriminate, subjugate, and humiliate. Tyrants use this tool to divide and conquer. It would be a sign of maturity for the gay community or any community to stand upon its own merits instead of leaning on government to artificially bestow a form of approval that mature adults should not require. Let this city council lock away the tool of racists and tyrants once and for all, and only grant special recognition for individual achievement. Please reject the one-size-fits-all national approach and exercise the sovereign right of our city to recognize individual achievement only. The purpose of any government is to govern. Do not let any group's need for approval make you feel obligated to act outside of your jurisdiction to soothe their insecurities. One other point. Government recognition for certain groups of human beings for nothing more than an accident of birth to the exclusion of other groups does not meet the strict definition of racism. However, for a country founded on the principle that all are created equal, A government that divides citizens and leaves others out creates an odor that smells like racism.
Thank you. Next up is Charles Gilmer.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor. My name is Charles Gilmer. I'm at 3165 Golden Oak, and I am against the listing of entertaining anything for Gay Pride, Pride Month. I have been here long enough to enjoy this beautiful city, and I love it. The people I've met here since I came to Texas, I want to continue bragging about Texas, and especially Farmers Branch. So my vote is against the Pride Month. And thank you for all your recognition, and thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Sherry Collier.
My name is Sherry Collier. I live at 3165 Golden Oak, Farmers Branch, and I am opposed to the calendar of events because regarding Gay Pride, I don't think we need to celebrate one's sexuality. That is absolutely no reason for us to have a holiday proclaimed. So I am opposed to it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Nancy Snyder.
Hello, I am Nancy Snyder. I live here in Farmers Branch. I've been a citizen for about 32 years. And I wanted to make a comment on the discussion of the calendar of events for the Ethnic Heritage Month and recognizing all of the national state observances. I just don't see that that's necessary. I don't see why we would celebrate other ethnics, certain ethnics, and as someone previously had said, you know, it excludes others. I'm American. I was born and raised in America, and I served in the military. And I got the background of French, English, Dutch, and German. And I don't know that any of those are celebrated. And if they are, you know, why? I don't need each one of those. I'm not French. I'm not German. Even though those are part of my ethnic background, that's not who I am. I'm an American citizen, and we celebrate Americans on certain holidays, on 4th of July and other holidays. And so it's just, I don't see the point. And I don't think that it brings anything to our city, but as others have said, it brings division. And I don't see why we shouldn't celebrate our city. Let's celebrate the founding of Farmers Branch. Let's celebrate the founding of Texas and the founding of America, and us as inclusive people, you know, together. There's no reason why we need to celebrate gay pride. I mean, you are who you are. Your choices are your choices. We don't have a heterosexual month to celebrate those who choose that. You know, I mean, we could go on and on and on, as they say. And so I just wanted to say that I'm against that, and I don't see how that would benefit our city or our citizens. So thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Brenda Broderick.
Brenda Broderick, 13531 Rawhide. Mayor and council, thank you for giving us this opportunity. This is from Alex Sekal. Please stop this madness. We shouldn't celebrate every little thing. Now, my thoughts. This is a little bit different angle. There are some homosexuals in all 5 districts who feel caught in the trap of homosexuality. They want to be free. If they're a woman, they'd really love to have a good man to love them and take care of them. If they're a man, They'd really love a woman who would respect and think highly of them. If we were to accept and promote June as Pride Month, we would not be helping these neighbors of ours. We'd be hurting them. We'd be an accomplice to their staying bound in a very unnatural lifestyle. It is not acceptable for a man to have sexual relations with another or a woman to have sexual relations with another woman.
Brenda,
Yeah?
I'm going to caution you just to stay on topic as
Okay.
related to the policy of
Okay.
possible calendar, not get off into lifestyle or anything like that.
Okay.
All righty?
Well, the lifestyle, well, okay. So the topic is having a calendar of events, and one of those months would honor the homosexual agenda or the homosexuals Pride Month. And like the others have said, this is not appropriate for our city because not everyone, there's a lot of Christians in this city, and they are not, in accordance with the word, they are not for the Pride lifestyle. Because it hurts people and it's in bondage. So I'm against this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is George Broderick. He's not here? Okay, I'm sorry. Kevin Caldwell.
Mayor, Council, Kevin Caldwell on Tanglewood Drive. My comments are twofold today. One is from a charm perspective. The charm of Farmers Branch is that we lead, we don't follow. I don't see the need to constantly be adopting other things that other people are doing, much less the state of Texas broadly or the U.S. government in particular. That's one thing. Farmers Branch is a leader, they're not a follower. I'm also a very practical guy. There's 12 months in a year, last time I checked. I hate to see the council put themselves in a position where, one, they've got to identify the first 12 that gets celebrated. But then following that, guess what happens? You got to choose one to take off to put another one on. Think of the consequences, the unintended consequences of what that's going to be like for a council that has a tendency to be divisive in the first place. So let's celebrate who we are as individuals. If we have to put an adjective to it, let's call ourselves Americans. Let's have an American month. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Daniel Bowe.
Good afternoon. My name is Daniel Bowe, 3464 Chaparral Drive in Farmers Branch. Been a resident, me and my family, for over 20 years now, and grateful to live in this jewel of a city. I just have questions that I'll pose. I know I won't get answers, but I want to know what Gay Pride Month means. I want to know what it consists of. I want to know how it's going to be celebrated and or recognized. Are there planned events? Are we going to be subject to some of the things that some of the other constituents spoke of? This was just voted on in March. And 2 of the council members voted yes on this. And I know this is a new session, and congratulate you on your good campaign, well won. But why is it the first thing that's spoke of in the new session? I don't understand that. I think all the other calendars and what is proposed to be put in the calendars, I think that's just sheep's clothing for June Pride Month. And I don't think it should be celebrated. And I think it should be voted down again. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Robert Brown.
I got strong religious beliefs.
Mr. Brown,
Yes,
name
sir.
and address.
I live in Dallas now. And I just moved into an apartment. I don't even know my address I'd had to get my phone. But I'm opposed to this, what I'm hearing, and I go to Christian Center Church up here on Josie. And, you know, Jesus is God to me. And I was molested as a child like 3 times. And promoting this is not right. And with that, I pass.
Thank you. That is all the folks that I have signed up to speak for citizen comment. Our next order of business is item C1, which is the review and discuss consent and regular agenda items. Councilman Roman?
I would like to pull a few items from the consent agenda. That would include M3, M4.
M3 and 4?
Mm-hmm. M2, M3, M4, there we go.
2 also?
2, 3, and 4, yeah.
2, 3, and 4.
And that's it.
Okay. We will move items M2, 3, and 4 to regular agenda to be items O, 2, 03, and 04. Very good. Councilwoman Bennett? I'm good, thank you. Councilman Reed?
I'm fine, thanks.
Councilwoman Villafranca?
No changes, thank you.
Councilman Neal?
I'm good, thank you, sir.
Very good. I have nothing at this time. I'm going to move around. Our next order of business is going to be item C5, which is to discuss a proposed amendment to the current City Council travel policy related to reimbursements.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Council, Aaron Flores, Deputy Director of Administrative Services, Deputy City Secretary. I do not have a presentation for this item. This was requested by Mayor Pro Tem Roman for a possible amendment to our travel policy, and our city attorney is here to answer further questions if needed, and I'm also here.
Very good. Thank you. Councilman Roman?
Sure. So one of the new things that we've been now receiving, maybe not all of us, I certainly haven't, opted to take it, but the $200 a month stipend, and obviously as a financial planner, I have my opinion on receiving W-2 income, which we found out originally we thought it was going to be 1099 contractor income, which you can handle in a very unique way, but this is W-2 income, so we're essentially being treated as employees and having to pay into the pension as if we were employees, and then there are very limited income tax considerations that we can take advantage of that are not, that would otherwise be available for 1099 people. And so I was thinking, is there a better way that we might be able to maximize the receipt of that $200 and minimize any of our tax exposure for people who are maintaining consideration to that? So one of the things that I talked to our city attorneys about was to implement sort of a reimbursement type structure where we have $200 per month that we can claim as a reimbursement in lieu of receiving the $200 a month payment. And so in coordination and collaboration with the attorneys, they put together some language to that effect and just kind of wanted to present it. It's still the same $200. It's just not going to be subject to income taxation. So, it maximizes the funds that we will be receiving. And I think if you were to take advantage of doing it in the way that it is being presented today, I think it's actually a much more transparent way of using that money, because it would essentially go through the Travel Expense Review Committee and be approved as an expense up to $200 per month of any expenditure that we want that is somewhat related to our positions and the exercise of our roles. So did I summarize that quite well? Feel free to fill in anything else that's necessary.
Better than I could have. Good
Yeah.
job.
So that's what we're here discussing today, just implementing that so that we can begin. Obviously, this is a new thing for us that started last May. So just had an idea and wanted to make sure that I presented it to the council. And if people are amenable to that, then I think it would be a better approach for those who don't want any income tax consequences from serving in this role. That's it.
Thank you. Councilwoman Bennett? Councilman Reed?
Question I have is, would it involve the maintaining of receipts, submission of receipts, create administrative challenges, work, what have you, for the city? Number two, how does that come into play since the stipend was a city vote? Would it have to go in front of city residents again for another vote in order to be amended?
So to the first question that you had about administrative challenges, there's none. It would be the same process that we currently follow for any reimbursement expenditures for travel. So you have an expenditure of $200, you'll submit it to the city secretary's office or the receptionist at the front, or administrative assistant at the front. She'll send it to the travel expense review committee. They'll review it, knowing that it is part of that reimbursement policy, and then that we're discussing today, and then they'll approve it, and then you'll get cut a check. So I would say maybe similar type of administrative responsibilities compared to processing payroll for if you were to opt for the W-2 option. Maybe even less, because you won't be having to expect a W-2, W-2 at the end of the year, so it might eliminate some administrative responsibilities and compliance requirements that we would be responsible for as employees compared to a reimbursement policy. And I think the second thing that you had a question about, I actually asked the same question to the attorneys, and the answer is no, we won't have to go through a vote. The way that the charter amendment was written, that was approved, it fully allows for this and gives us the flexibility to do that. So we won't have to wait for another charter election to do this. Anything you want to add?
Again, no. You hit all the highlights.
Councilwoman Biffrey?
As part of my commitment to the community, I have promised the Firehouse Theater my $200 stipend for
We're
this
not
year. So
politicking
with that, it's not politics. I just want to know how that would be affected.
Yeah, so I would say you could give the money to them in cash probably, and then you could request a reimbursement. That would probably maximize the funds going to them. Otherwise, you'll have to withhold income taxes, and you'll have to also, that $200 is further reduced by the pension required payment of 7%, or I think 6, whatever it is. And so that certainly would be something that is available to you.
Thank you.
Councilman Neal?
Is this change in addition, excuse me, is this just an optional scenario, or could we still continue the original plan as we've been following?
Yes, it would be basically a one or the other situation. So you
Okay.
can opt to continue to receive your W-2, or if you wanted to opt for this other option, then you can do that as well. We talked about having something signed ahead of time to say, I am not going to be accepting any of my $200, and in lieu of that, I am opting for this reimbursement policy approach. So it's one or the other, not both.
Thank you, that's all I have.
Okay. I have a couple questions. Obviously, $2,400 a year is not that much of a tax liability, shouldn't be for anybody. So I guess the actual amount that you would receive would be $200 a month less taxes and the 7% that goes to the retirement, correct?
Right, and then
Okay.
depending on the tax bracket you're in, 'cause
Understood.
obviously I do this for a living, and so every $1,000 may bump you to a different tax bracket. So when you end up filing taxes, it may have a different effect from what you actually withheld.
Yes, that's possible. The other thing is record keeping. And so I know as mayor, I'm driving to meetings all over the county and even to Fort Worth for meetings all the time. So do I need to now turn in actual gas receipts for everything? Or And all the people that I meet with for coffee or breakfast or lunch, where I'm picking up the tab for that, do I need to turn all that in? Would I have to, or can, since you're saying it's optional, I could elect to just remain under the same system that I'm currently doing?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, if you opted for this, what we're proposing today, then yeah, it would be record keeping and you'd have to submit receipts. And that's why I was saying I think it's a little bit more transparent with how we're using that money because it goes through a process through the city. It becomes a matter of public record that residents can pull. But if you wanted to continue doing the same, receipt of the W-2 funds that you're receiving now, and you wouldn't have to submit any receipts or anything, you just continue as is. And it's not required or mandatory to do one or the other. You can choose what you'd like.
All right, so I just want to make sure that you're proposing this as an option to what is the current policy. That's fine. So obviously, we're not taking any action on this today, but
Just one point of clarification.
Yes, ma'am.
So we do have it written that $2,400 cap is based on a calendar year. The option, we can keep it that way, or do we want to tie it to fiscal year? And that's just direction we need from y'all.
I would be in favor of calendar years just because it's simpler.
Okay, and that's how it's written.
Okay. That's how
Yeah,
we do our taxes.
I'm open to either. Yeah, I'm open to either. Yeah, doesn't matter to me.
Okay. Okay, any other comments on that? Seeing,
So I just want to make sure that she has clear direction on this.
Well-
So it sounds like we're moving forward to bring this forward as an agenda item in the regular meeting. Is that?
So
what
Nicole,
we're
that
hearing?
would be our next step, is to bring it back. We wouldn't need an ordinance, just bring the policy back.
That's correct. They would just
Okay.
need to vote to adopt the policy.
Okay, then yes, we'll be
As an
bringing it back.
as an option.
So when you say as an option, so what he's talking about is a provision that we've added to your travel policy, which you adopted back in January. So this is an amendment to your travel policy. So you would be adopting the new travel policy that includes this option for the 2,400.
There you go.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay.
Very good. Okay. Once again, making a change to the process of the meeting this afternoon, we're going to go into executive session for item D1, which is the City Council will convene in a closed executive session pursuant to Section 551.074 and 551.072, Chapter 2 of the Texas Government Code to receive legal advice and discuss an employment agreement for the deputy city manager. So please take 5 minutes. We'll meet in the city manager's conference room, and then we will be back out as soon as that is over. And we are back. Thank you very much for bearing with us. Our next item of business is item C2, which is received presentation from Public Works on the city's water and wastewater rate study.
Good afternoon, Mayor, council members. Ray Silvarez, Director of Public Works. We have an exciting presentation here for you today. Every so often, we look at our forecast of what our money is doing and where it's going based on our projects and our operations. And so one way to kind of really home into that and see what's going on is we prepare what's known as a water and sewer rate study. And that kind of looks at three components of our operation. It looks at the actual operations of maintaining our wastewater system. It looks at our wholesale purchases from DWU and TRA. And then it also looks at the CIP side of it too, as we start to implement new water lines or upgrade aging infrastructures. So all that costs money. And so where does that money come from? From the enterprise fund. And so mainly comes from the bills that you pay monthly for your water and wastewater. And so we been looking at our rates and seeing what needs to be done to achieve the goal that the council wants to get done. And so here before you today, we have NewGen Strategies Solution. I have Richard Campbell and Andrea Campbell as well, and they're going to help me present this study for you. There's a lot involved in this presentation. It's one of the lengthiest one I think we've had here. We're just presenting this as an overview to you because there's quite a bit that has to be presented to you. And we're hoping that as they lay it out, you can see why there has to be some action taken on later down the road as to what we're going to do with our water rates. And as we go through each slide, they'll start introducing what the enterprise fund system is. The enterprise system is, what it entails, where we're at currently, and what we're looking in the future, and what can we do to work to get us there. So again, this is just the consultants we hire. They're going to come and speak and lay it out for you, and then we can have some questions afterwards. Richard?
Thank you, Ray. Mr. Mayor, Council, thanks for having us here. There's no pressure whatsoever. When you combined it with an exciting presentation, and it's a lengthy one of the more that we've had, I'm not sure where we go from there. That we do have a lot of information. We are not going to hit on every slide and go into detail on that. Please stop if you have questions. I'd rather it be interactive, and that's kind of the purpose of what we're trying to do today. We had a process that we go through on each one of these. We kind of look at these with a certain set of lens when we go through this. And one of the big things that we assume is that you're operating a business, because you are. When you run a utility is a business. You're selling a product. There are certain expectations, and there are certain expectations when we do the analysis then. One of those, maybe it should be, seems like it's self-evident, but we expect the business to make enough money to pay the bills and to cover it and to keep operating, to keep serving citizens. And so that's the premise that we worked off of, is that revenues have to meet expenses. The other part, another step is then in reserves, putting aside money, planning for a rainy, well, literally in this business, planning for a rainy day. So, but having reserves set aside and then reinvesting into the system. That's the expectation as well. We're setting aside for infrastructure. We're setting aside for the future. You're putting money back into the system to grow. You're putting it into renewal and replacements, all of those things, those three components, those are what we go into operating under. This is a business, and we're going to operate it like a business. Other part of this, from a rate standpoint, utilities, just in general, are very fixed costs intensive enterprises. Most time it doesn't matter if you sell water, you treat, or anything, you still have those costs in place. So we know that going in. When we do this, we have to set rates to cover from a cash flow standpoint. So city-wise, unlike, say, the rates that y'all get from DWU, TRA, they look at you at a little bit different viewpoint than the way you look at your citizens. Y'all operate on a cash flow basis, money in, money out, same as what your home is. You have a mortgage, you have costs, you have food expenses, utility expenses, you have a paycheck. Everything needs to meet it and balance at the end of the day. We operate the same way. You operate the same way when you're doing that. So that's what we work off. One of the biggest things that you have, too, that we have to make sure you meet is, again, we mentioned DWU and TRA. So those are two of your bigger expenses that you operate off of. Highly simplified, but when we go through this process, it's kind of three steps: a revenue requirement, cost allocation and then rate design, that pie is the money that we need, the revenue requirements, how big does that pie need to be? And then we go ahead and we cut that up and share those costs amongst our customers. And how do we need to cut that pie up to fit our customer classes? And then how do we want to collect those, rate design? How do we want to collect it at the end of the day to get our money back in? When we talk about revenue requirements, it's really no more complicated than our revenue requirements have to equal our revenues that we need to take in to cover expenses. And those can be our revenues, our O&M expenses, your day-to-day operations, all those things that it does that takes for you to operate every day, every month, every year, operating expenses. Then right now, y'all don't have debt, but if you had debt, if you issued debt, that would be part of your operating your revenue requirements. Capital improvement plan, your CIP, that's part of your revenue requirements. That's your capital part of it. And then the reserves that we talk about, maintaining that reserve balance. That all goes into the revenue requirements. That all goes into how much money do we need at the end of the day to keep functioning. Then recovering that, we're looking at rate structure, our rate component part of it, the recovery part of it. Almost always, there are a two-part rate component. There's a fixed part, as we mentioned, highly intensive fixed part of this, and then the variable part of it. The fixed part will not change no matter what you do. If you sell water or not, treat sewer or not, you have to cover those costs. You have salary costs, operating costs, things that doesn't matter if you sell water, you still have to pay those bills. That's the fixed part. When we go through this, when we went through this, every one of these that we do, they don't tie. The end result, your rates, just to give you a heads up, your rates do not correlate to that fixed component in your system, because it would place that rate so high that you'd be sitting there in all these conversations that we're going to have about, I'm worried about our fixed income people, I'm worried about our elderly, our senior. Wouldn't matter, because that fixed part would be so big that there's nothing they could do about it. There's nothing you could do about it anyway. So the fixed part in the study will not equate to the fixed part in your rate when we get through with this. It's going to be subsidized by that variable component. It always is. When we do this, though, and we do this rate recovery, we're trying to figure out how we want to recover rates, how we want to get back that revenue. We always look at it, you have a few things. You have it from your city standpoint, what do we want to do? What are we accomplishing? And then the other part is our customers. What we're trying to keep in mind, what's important to them. What's important to y'all, it could be a number of things when you're looking at this. Are you worried about, hopefully, making sure we have enough revenue that it covers, that hopefully that's the first step. Then the other part, revenue stability. If it's wet, I mentioned the rainy day thing. If it rains a lot, or if it doesn't rain at all, can we still cover revenue? Are we selling water? Are we under restrictions? We're going to try to take that into account, affordability, transparency of rates, conservation. We want to be good stewards of what we got. All those things, any of the above or all the above, unfortunately, some of them work against each other. If you want to make sure we have stable revenue, but we want to do conservation as well, well, those are exactly opposite each other. So just conversations that you need to have, things you need to think about, things that we think about when we're doing this. Then the other part, and this is where it just comes down to communication, because then there's what do your customers think is important? What do they prioritize? Housing, clothing, utilities, those types of things, eating out, just eating in, groceries, entertainment, all those things doesn't necessarily, in fact, very seldom does it go hand in hand with what you prioritize or what we prioritize as far as recovering revenues. Again, the communication part of it is probably the bigger part of it, because that's what we find, and we all as an industry kind of did this to ourselves too. It's not always transparent what the real cost is of operating your system. So day-to-day, year-to-year cost, operating cost, infrastructure cost, all those things, it's hard to pass that along. And we're really, in the past, we've done a horrible job of it. Honestly, we undervalued ourselves. We don't convey that to our customers, and we don't look at it through the same lens. If we took one of your customers and said, hey, how is your system? How's your water system, your sewer system? Well, I turn the tap on, I get water, and and then it goes away. We've got a great system. And you're sitting there going, yeah, I know what we need to do next year. I know who's coming. I know what developments are coming. I know what's been there 50 years and needs to be replaced. Whole different lens. And that's hard. It's hard to convey to your customers. It's hard to convey what you deal with on a day-to-day basis. And so it's really the communication part is where you hit a snag here in trying to get everybody on board and moving in the same direction. This is just an idea on the communication part, and we use this a lot. The value of water, $6.18. What will it buy you in Texas? Your $6.18 here, that is your second tier. The first 2,000 gallons of water of usage is basically free for y'all. It's included in your fixed charge. So y'all don't start charging for water from a variable standpoint until you hit your second tier over 2,000 gallons, and that's at $6.18. That'll buy you 1 3/4 cups of coffee from Starbucks, or 3.5 bottles of Shiner, 2 1/4 gallons of gas, or 35 bottles of water, or 1,000 gallons of water delivered right to your house. And most of the time, if you ask, nobody has a problem spending $3 or $4 for that 20-ounce bottle of Aquafina or something at 7-Eleven. They're going to argue about spending another $1 for that 1,000 gallons that's going to be delivered right to their home. So it's a communication thing. In these sessions here, in the work sessions, in the public sessions, in town hall meetings, those type of things, that's the way to get the information out. But that's really where we run into the snag most of the time. Talk about what's going on to this process, what we did moving into it. Now what I want to do is actually have Andrea come up here. Andrea worked on most of the modeling, most of the analysis, and so she's just going to talk about really where you're at right now as a utility. Then we'll go ahead and look at some scenarios and different things and options on how to move forward here. Andrea, if you would.
Hello, everyone. As Rich said, my name's Andrea. I did a large portion of the modeling and analysis on this project, so I just want to first talk about where we stand right now currently. So if we continue to cash fund CIP, no increases in rates or anything like that, for 2025 through 2030, we're looking at an insufficient financial performance. Some key drivers for that are going to be the $78 million CIP plan that we have, and that covers 5 years. Some additional metrics are a 90-day reserve that is set up, which for the city comes out to being about $6 million. And then if debt is issued, the financial institution will require financial metrics to be met. So those are taken into account as well. We put together a regional bill comparison. So this is a comparison using your average user. As you can see, it's a combined bill of water and wastewater. Currently, Farmers Branch is at $95.20, lower on the comparison wise, but I do want to state this is not an apples to apples. While this is a great tool, it is not necessarily showing the whole picture. So for instance, we have a $78 million CIP. That's not the same for Carrollton. That's not the same for Addison. That's not the same for all the other cities. So it's not necessarily an apples to apples, but still a great comparison, still a great tool to use. Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Well, it's also not the same because we buy our water from City of Dallas or Dallas Water Utilities. Not everybody here does.
Correct. So that's a great statement and brings me into my next. So, yeah, great. Thanks for the help.
Okay.
So
Set it up for you.
part of moving into that, so a large part of our expenses, of your expenses are going to be your water purchase and your wastewater treatment through TRA and DWU. So right here, we have a breakout for you. This is going to show you that 73% of your O&M expenses is your water purchase. As of 2030, that goes up to almost 79% of your O&M expenses. On the wastewater side, 74% of your O&M expenses is your treated wastewater. And then by 2030, that goes to almost 78%. So a large portion of those expenses are to your wholesale. This is kind of that breakout of the 78 million that I mentioned before the capital plan, and this is broken out annually and by utility, coming out to the total at the end of the 5 years to 78 million. So this is showing that breakdown of what you're doing right now, cash funding everything over the next 5 years with no debt issuance. And that brings us to where we are now. No increases in rates, cash funding everything. We're showing a revenue deficit of almost over $67 million by 2030. We are under recovering as of 2025. Water is the only one recovering, and wastewater is under recovering all from 2025 to 2030. The graph below is that $6 million fund balance, the 90-day reserve that we want to achieve. So the orange line is going to be kind of that target for us. We have set up a few scenarios, and this is kind of going to break down some options that we have of where to go from here. So I'm going to have Rich come back up and talk about each scenario in detail.
Before we move into the scenarios, any questions about what we've got so far?
Yeah, can you go back one slide?
Absolutely, yes, sir.
So on the under recovering of wastewater,
And that was showing that change in net asset. It shows what the under recovery is.
okay, but is some of that due in part to all the debt that TRA continues to issue that we are responsible for?
It sure will. That is included in that TRA rate, yes, sir.
Okay.
So, and they update it every year, so they absolutely pass it along.
Because that's 200 to 500 million, if not more,
Yes,
a
sir.
year.
And they're projecting, and we have it, one of the slides in the back, just to pull up if needed, but they're projecting for the next 5 years or so, 7 to 11% increases every year.
Okay. Well, I remember back in I think it was either 16 or 17, and DWU said that you could just forecast water, clean water, going up 10% a year, every year forever.
Yes.
Well, that didn't really happen, but we are catching up, and I guess they're going to be adjusting their rates.
And they will. They haven't come out completely yet with what their new projections are, but they are starting to put those out.
Okay.
And of course, they're running new pipelines and everything too, so it's still going up.
Okay.
You're right.
Council, any questions at this point? No? Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. Again, you've hit the biggest part of what y'all, short of your capital programs, just for your own needs, that's your largest part of it. And unfortunately, but you have contracts, but other than controlling your usage to the extent you can that your contract allows you, you almost have not a lot of control over that portion because you have to pay them. So when we were in these scenarios, we ran 5 scenarios here. We could have run 100 scenarios on this. Nobody wanted to hear it. We didn't want to, Andrea would have walked off if I'd asked her to run that, but there's so many options, different debt options, percentages, how much you're going to fund either way, how you want to fund that, how much cash to use. So we chose 5, tried to be reasonable on this, and we made some assumptions when we went through this. So scenario 1, when we go through here, all of these show what the rate increases would be needed for water and for wastewater for all 5 years. Scenario 1 is assuming if we continue to operate the way we do. Cash fund all our CIP program and just move forward with that. Each one of these, you already have a GO bond for $5.5 million that waiting to fund right now, and that would be for the water side. That's been included in all of these scenarios. So that would be for 2025, and you'll see that up here in the scenarios. So scenario 2, we issued GO bonds only. Cash funded some of it, and GO bonds on that. Scenario 3, we issued revenue bonds only and issued them every year, and then cash funded a portion of it as well. Scenario 4, again, revenue bonds. 1 year, we funded it fully with revenue bonds. The next year, we funded it fully with cash and kept alternating on that one. Then scenario 5, we said, okay, what if we up the ante, double the CIP, no bond issues, cash fund it the way we're doing? What does that look like if we could even get that done from a processing the work standpoint? So let's just walk through these. We won't run through all the numbers one by one, but just to give you an idea. Again, all of these have the CIP except for 5. All of these have the CIP of $78 million. That's that GO bond funding of 5.5 in 2025. That goes to water. No future bonds issued. Everything is funded by cash the way you currently operate. So we didn't issue debt. You have no debt on your system then. That's what it shows here on your table, the table up top. Water, wastewater, and then combined, it'll show a cash funding versus the bond funding. So you can see everything is in cash. And then the bottom part, that debt funding portion, there's the GO bond issue for $5.5 million. 100% there in the first column goes to water. You'll see in these other ones, the revenue bond issuance, how much we issued revenue bonds for, none of them for here. So no bond issuance is here. Everything is cash funded. What that means, nothing in 2025. Where we're at there. 2026 is going to take just for water, 26 starting at 15%, then 12, 20, and then 0 and 0 for 29 and 30. Wastewater is 27% increase, then a 20 and 11.5. On none of these really did wastewater, except for 1 year, did it actually make enough revenue to cover costs. You can see in that wastewater where it says change in net assets, that's what's showing. So for example, that $3.4 million in 2025 in the red for wastewater, that's showing it under recovered by $3.4 million. If it's in the black, in the positive, that means that we recovered sufficient revenues, over recovered by 6.9, say for water there. So you can see for the most part, water recovers enough and covers itself and recovers for wastewater as well. About every year, we hit revenues or we bled down cash enough so we didn't keep building up. Somewhere there was a balance there between, okay, once we set the rates, we're collecting the revenues. We don't want to continue to collect and just put money in the bank. We're still trying to target those numbers that we were. You can see on the bottom graph that targeted reserve of 4.7 million, 5, 5.4, 5.8, 6.2, and 6.6. That's what we were trying to hit ultimately, is somewhere around there, and it's a balance between spending the cash and collecting too much money. So, but that's where we're at from a rate standpoint. And then from a residential bill, we'll have these, and so it'll be the same setup on each scenario. We'll show what it meant from a rate standpoint, and then here's the bill impact for a residential customer. Average usage 7,500 gallons, and here's what it means. So in 2026, that second to the bottom line, that increase by dollar, that $19.10, that's saying that their bill, the average customer bill is going to increase $19.10 over the prior year. Monthly. Same thing, then the next year is going to increase $17.79 per month over the prior year from there, and so on. Then scenario 2, so that was all cash funding. Here, same thing, CIP, 78 million, same thing. We're issuing GO bonds here. What you're going to see on this one, keep in mind, GO bonds are funded by property taxes. So not an impact to your utility customer because they're just getting cash in. So the cash is being issued by the city, funded by property tax, and being transferred into the utility system. And the rates will reflect that as well when we go through this. It'll show everything, if you see on the top section, everything is cash funded because again, the cash is being transferred into the system from property taxes, so the city will be transferring in. And then we did issue GO bonds, so you can see on the bottom side where already the 5.5, but then the 10, 10, 14, 8, and 8, we did not issue the full amount. For example, In 2026, you see that $13.5 million is what the combined debt is needed for the capital program, and we issued 10 million. So we're cash funding 3.5 million out of the utility part of it, transferring in the $10 million. Yes, sir.
But that also assumes that residents vote to approve
Yes, sir.
a GO bond.
That's
And if
exactly
they
right.
don't, then you're really screwed.
Right, that's right. So then you're back to where you were in scenario
Okay.
one. We're just funding it with cash or not doing the programs.
Well, could you not fund it with, between rate increase and budget if there was a surplus in the budget, and build that into the budget, although budget's capped, you can't grow more than 3.5%?
The utility budget or
Well, the city budget, but,
Yes.
so I'm
That would
looking,
be one to bring Leanna up to explain the nuances of crossing funds. There's a lot to that, and I have a feeling she'll give us some very clear guidance.
What will happen in the current scenarios, we've already drawn down cash to fund the 25-year, and then we always try to keep that fund balance 6.5 million. So these rates allow you to pull it down to that 6.5 million, but you've still got those huge increases going forward. So there is no other cash.
okay.
So we almost fall back into that scenario one where the only other option is just keep increasing rates to fund the projects. Then if we were going to do it, try to do it from GO bonds. So, but great scenario from a utility standpoint if you look at it here, because rate increases of 3% and 4%, 5 and 10 for the wastewater side. So much lower than what we just looked at from a cash funding standpoint. But again, we're hoping to issue GO bonds, have to agree to increase property taxes to cover that. So there's a lot of moving parts that have to happen for this one. Minimal impact, then $2.86 a month, and say in 2026, $2.86 a month. Impact on your combined bill, $294 the next year, $447 the next year. So much lower impact, doesn't reflect the full picture to the customer, to the property owner. On scenario 3, same numbers we had as far as capital program. GO bond still in there. No GO bond issuances other than the one that's already been addressed at 5.5 million. This time we issued revenue bonds. Revenue bonds keep it inside the utility. Utility is paying for its own funding for its own projects in this case. If you can see here again, the cash funding and then the bond funding. So obviously we did a 50-50 split for the most part. In 2028, we issued 75% bonds instead of 50% because it's a little bit higher. You can see the jump on the combined, the bond funding and cash funding there. So a much higher capital program in 2028. So that's why we kind of shifted to 75% bond funding instead of funding all that cash. Otherwise, we went 50% bonds, 50% cash each year. And what that did for us, on the water side, no increase until 2027. Then it was 7%, 5, 3, and 5. Wastewater side's a 20% increase in 26, and then 12, 5, 10, and 10. Still, higher increases on the wastewater side, but it still does not cover, is not paying for itself. The wastewater is not standalone there. We're not trying to get it to be necessarily standalone. Perfect world, it would be great. I would more so say you need to know where you're at as opposed to this actually absolutely has to operate this way. You issue debt combined. It's not a problem operating combined as long as you know you're operating that way. We do cover costs. Obviously, it's being subsidized on the water side, but we're covering costs. You can see we start to bleed down in the last years to where we're really tracking in 29 and 30 on the graph on the bottom. We're tracking that targeted reserve, that 90-day operating reserve. And so we start spending a little bit of cash. So this is if we issued revenue bonds. We split it 50-50 for the most part, revenue bonds every year. and then the rest paid for with cash. Kept everything internal for the utility, and it's funding itself. Here's what it means from a customer standpoint. So combined bill, this is for the combined monthly bill, 2026, it would be an $8.03 increase a month. And then it'd be an additional 27 and $9.63 a month increase, and then 564 and so on. So all combined water and wastewater to the residential customer, all single-digit increases every year. These keep your capital program. This addresses your capital program. These also include inflation, growth on cost, same thing we're dealing with at home. Growth on the infrastructure, the building, as well as labor, all those things are built into here as well on these increases. Then scenario 4, same thing, 78 million. Here, instead of issuing bonds every year, we issued revenue bonds every other year. So we did 100% issuance in 1 year, and the next year we funded 100% cash. What you can see is the numbers are going to go up and down because we got to build up cash in 1 year, we spend it the next year, so it kind of goes up and down and makes for an interesting target. But this is what it shows, still the 5.5 million, but you'll see the rotating back and forth between cash funding and bond funding. And this is where we're at. From a water standpoint, 4%, 8, 6, 10, and 2. And then wastewater, 8, 10, 10, 12, and 2. Again, wastewater, being consistent on these, but then we're collecting water enough as a combined system to do what it is that we want to do. You can see the buildup, and that's what I was talking about, the up and down on here, and it's a little harder to control. But this is if you issue, and again, this is a policy decision. How do you choose to issue debt? Do you want to go through, and the EMA have a lot to say into this. You know, it's a process going through and issuing debt every year. For those who have been through it, simpler to issue every other year. And then figuring out the combination on how you want to fund as well. And you can issue every other year and still fund for the projects for the next year as well. So there are a lot of combinations that we could have looked at that you could do with this. You can package this a whole lot of different ways. Doing it here, this is what we're looking at for 2026. Be a combined monthly of $5.41 increase. That goes to $8.92 the next year and $8.48 the next year and so on. So not horrible if you look at say not horrible, relatively speaking, but keeps everything except for that 2029. That gets up close to 11%. Everything else is 5.69, 5.7, 8.9. So little lower increases on there. Again, this is not a perfect mix, but we have to pick something on this. It gets interesting to play with the cash. As the cash builds up here, if you notice, we've got some higher buildups than what we want. Some things we might would fund a little more with cash to bleed down some of that cash, but you're still planning on the next year. So again, just another option. And here, we went crazy and let's get some projects done. So we doubled the capital program, $156 million, funded it all through cash the way we are. For starters, if you could even get the resources, the crews to do this, the construction to do this, get the materials to do this, to ramp up to this level too, then you'd have to also be willing to deal with your neighborhoods. If you're doubling the amount of work that's going on in your neighborhoods and around the city, you're going to feel that. Your residents are going to feel that too. Again, these are all choices as well, but another option to look at. So we doubled everything, cash funding, and this is what it did for us. 65% on water, 10 and 15, and then on wastewater, just 150% up front. And wastewater is finally paying for itself on there. But we do end up building up some cash more than we intended to. This is just because it is a conversation all the time, why can't we do more projects? There's a cost to that. There's a trade-off to that. And this is part of it. If you could even get all that done, if you're okay with the impact that that would have on the city, they're still paying for it, part as well. So this is what we had here, that $96 a month increase there, and then 9 and 14, then no increase after that. But this is what we had to the impact to the residential customer under this scenario. So it's the key thing. Main thing we would come out of this saying is, you are a business. Remember that you operate like a business. That's really all of it, is you have the responsibility to make enough money to continue to serve your customers. So that's your primary obligation, is serving your customers and making sure you can afford to serve your customers in the way that you need to. And then the really planning for a rainy day, can't overemphasize that. It's hard, and we see many of these who are on a month to month. I know many people unfortunately operate their homes. They have to operate their homes like that as well. That is hard when we see these utilities have no rainy day fund. They have no spare. If they get hit, it rains or it doesn't rain, they're not selling, they're not covering costs, they're not paying expenses. So these are important to us, that 90-day fund. And then reinvesting. I mean, you already know that you need the capital programs. You need to plan for growth. You've got growth coming. You know you have things that you need to replace. So that's really it for us. And just any questions at all?
Very good. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Councilman Rowan, questions? Councilwoman? Councilman Reed?
Thank you for the presentation. Well done.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Councilman Neal?
Yeah, I have a question for staff. There's an awful lot of information here. Thank you for the presentation. There's a lot of data, a lot of options. Lots of, yeah, it's exciting too, yes. I just have a question regarding the costs historically for TRA and the Dallas Water. Do we have or can you provide a percentage increase, say over the past 10 years? Do we have something to show us what it would, let's say historically, it's gone up 10%, 12% per year? Do we have?
So historically, we got this one over here, Richard.
I see these are the projections. I'm just wondering what
Yeah.
they really were, say, for the past 10 years, or is that something you can share with us?
This is what y'all printed out.
Yeah.
That's what you had printed
Yeah, I don't
out.
think
Did
that
we- But we didn't throw the
Yes, there it
percentages
is.
on.
Not the percentage. So we do have the data showing the increase from the last 10 years, but not percentage-wise, but we can get that information for you. It's right here.
And we've just been absorbing that through our budget over
Right.
so many years. So I'd like to see what those numbers look like.
And we can send this to you and add that column in there for the percentage increase to all of the council members. Also, the last time, so we've been flat at $21.99 starting 2019, and we've just been absorbing everything. With 1 year an exception, 2022, 2023, we dipped down to 50% for that 1 year, and then went right back to $21.99. But we can get that information for you.
Since we're talking about water and sewer, I recall a conversation here at council regarding some letter that we received or were about to receive from the federal government about copper and lead. Am I drawing a blank here? Somebody help me out here. Was a
It was
letter
2
that they
years
were.
Rural
ago.
revision.
Yeah.
Go
Can I
ahead.
can you send me a copy of that?
Yes, sir.
I'd
We
like
did
to
a
see that.
presentation on that.
Yeah, but I remember talking about it, and I remember that you said that there was a letter that we need to respond to within a certain amount of time.
Correct. So there is
I-
I can send that to the EPA HAZMAT that we've already responded and are in
Right.
compliance with that.
Yeah, I'd just like to see that
Of course,
letter.
we can
That's
send
all.
that to you.
That's all I'm asking about.
Yes,
there.
sir.
Okay, that's all I have for right now. So.
Okay. So, I'm sorry.
I'm done.
One thing I do want to say, so we just wanted to put this out there because it was a lot of information. As you can see, it was a lengthy slide presentation. And so what we plan to do is afterwards, Leanne and myself, along with the city managers, to sit down with you and discuss how we want to do this. Because if we stay in the current scenario we're we're not going to be able to do all the projects that we want to do. So we have to make some tough decisions. What do we want to do? That's why we presented those scenarios for you, so you can see the tools that are available to you. There's some actual tweaking we can do in some of those scenarios, but there's one that we need to agree on and see what we need to do so that we can get that in the budget process as well.
So I would suggest that we schedule a separate work session to address this. The need is extremely important, number one. Number two, you know, our fixed cost of what it costs for water, it is what it is. And so we charge that water rate from Dallas Water, which is basically a pass-through, plus some small percentage on top of that to cover our own overhead, postage and accounting hours, whatever. It's not much. And then sewer is what it is, and that's going to be a constantly moving target every year. Some of these scenarios, since there is no discount for senior use of water versus new young family use of water, everybody pays the same. And some of these scenarios where we were talking more than $12 a month increase all the way up to $96 a month, that's, you know, $1,150 a year. That's probably not within the realm of possibilities. But we're going to have to make decisions on what makes best sense for Farmers Branch residents. And, you know, and I think that's going to take more than just this hour here. I think we're going to have a deeper dive into it. So I'd like us to think about scheduling a separate session so we can have that and a more open dialogue discussion as it relates to these scenarios.
Absolutely. There's a lot to take in, and that's why we just want to show you what's at your disposal and then have those conversations with you ongoing.
So,
Mr. Mayor, along the lines of what you were saying, some of y'all's discussions may end up being then, like a senior citizen type of thing. Do you want to restructure your rates the way, because you have 0 to 2,000, that's for everybody. That's for all your customer classes. So is there somebody that you're concerned about? Well, you may want to look at that first 2,000, incentivize differently. So it may be a different discussion than just, do we want a rate increase, depending on what you're trying to accomplish with it?
well,
Just food for thought.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, and I think we're probably going to have to increase rates. And when I say rates, I'm talking both factors, both components. And what that percentage is, I don't know. Council will have to determine that. But we need to see what it is that gets us whole for really that next 5-year period.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So,
Yep, we'll work on that and we'll get something scheduled. We'll work with the city manager.
Thank you all very much.
and with the dollars collected for stormwater, is that part of this? Okay, so that's even separate. Okay, very good. All right, next up is item C3, discuss the calendar of events for the City Council to acknowledge, including city service and Farmers Branch ethnic heritage recognition, aligning with national and state observances.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Stacy Henderson, Director of Administrative Services, City Secretary. I wanted to provide you with an update regarding the proposed calendar events and acknowledgement. Just to give you some background, this was originally before council on March 4th. No action was taken at that time. At a subsequent meeting, Councilman Reed requested the calendar of events come back, but it come back modified. And those modifications included no proclamations. They would be a social media recognition only, and that recognition would include the ethnic and cultural background of Farmers Branch, as well as city service recognition such as Fire Prevention Month, Parks and Recreation Month, things of those nature. So this calendar was created with that in mind. And this list right here is what's in your packet, is the proposed list of those items. And at council direction, staff will move forward, and we'll leave that discussion with you.
Thank you very much. Councilman Reed, want to expand?
Thank you, Stacy.
You're welcome.
As stated, the goal of the calendar is to just publicly acknowledge the various groups, professions, holidays, events that have been recognized in national and/or state calendars for specific days, i.e. 4th of July, weeks. We just had National Police Week, and months, various months. We're not looking for parades. We're not looking for celebrations. We're not looking, as someone had mentioned, erecting flagpoles for these acknowledgements. And these are not groups looking for approval. It's just something that we as a city, we as a nation, we as a state have deemed worthy of recognition. So again, we're not looking to promote or celebrate a group. It does not put one above the other. To be honest, my personal opinion, it's unfortunate that the conversation devolved into focusing on one specific event. If anything, that approach is divisive. What we're looking for is to acknowledge groups that are within our community. We're not saying one is better than the other. Again, we're not promoting or saying that we agree with certain things. We're just acknowledging their existence. If I were to say that Ben's tie looks nice, that doesn't mean that Terry's tie doesn't look nice. It's just a comment. It's just an acknowledgement. I think people should take the approach, like if I'm looking on Facebook, I'm scrolling down through things. If I see a post I don't agree with or, doesn't apply to me, I scroll on down to the next one. I'm not going to, get upset, get mad because of whatever that doesn't align with my beliefs or align with my practices. We're looking to acknowledge a variety of different religions. Typically, someone only follows one religion or maybe no religions. That doesn't mean that the others don't exist and are not worthy of acknowledgement. So that's why I suggested that we take a look at this. Again, we're pulling from national and state calendars. There's nothing, we're not looking to promote anything specific, but just to show something that we see that you're there. That's it. That's what I have.
Thank you very much. We'll start discussion. Councilman Rowland?
Well, I couldn't have said it better myself, so thank you for those comments. Obviously I am the gay council member, so maybe all those comments were reflected at me, but I will remind you of my 63% victory, and I will have some words for that a little bit later. But I am fully supportive of the calendar as it stands. I think somebody had a question and wanted to know, what does it mean if we adopted this? Does this mean we have a parade? Does this mean we have a flag? Does this mean we have this, or that? It is purely a social media marketing calendar that is posted on there. So it'll be a social media post. And I think, as Councilmember Reed has so eloquently stated, if it is not something that you support or you are particularly aligned with, then wait for the next month or wait for the next day, because it'll be probably a celebration for something else. So I'm supportive of the way that it stands right now and look forward to it coming forward for a vote.
Councilwoman Bennett.
I agree with both of you. However, I am not supportive the way it is. So, as previously, I never do this, but I actually have a 2-page statement that I'm going to read. So, as previously stated, there were no policies and procedures, so that has since been removed from the city website. I also have emailed several times about concerns regarding the marketing calendar and the inclusion of state and federal observances. Upon looking at this new calendar presented, I immediately noticed that the man that hung from a cross for my sins is nowhere to be found, nor is his mother. You can look to April and December on that. However, I also noticed that neither are the men and women that died for our freedom to observe the celebration for this calendar. You can look to May for that. Thus, I'm going to read my official statement regarding this. So, the importance of including American heritage, military sacrifice, and religious freedom in the city's recognition calendar. As the City Council considers a comprehensive calendar of recognitions to reflect the diversity, service, and civic identity of Farmers Branch, it is essential to include acknowledgments that honor the foundational principles and sacrifices that make all celebrations possible. First, American and Texas Heritage, a unifying foundation recognizing American and Texas heritage is not just an exercise in patriotism. It is an affirmation of our shared history, civic identity, and the values that unite us across backgrounds. Celebrations such as Texas Independence Day on March 2nd, Constitution Day on September 17th, and Independence Day on July 4th offer residents the opportunity to reflect on our democratic foundations and deepen our connection to local and national history. Omitting these observances risks presenting an incomplete picture of who we are as a community, one that honors diversity, but not the common framework that makes diversity possible. Second, military sacrifice, honoring those that secured our freedoms. Freedom is not free. The men and women that gave their lives in service to our country are commemorated most notably on Memorial Day, which is not listed, and Veterans Day, which is. Deserving international recognition, these sacrifices are the reasons we enjoy the freedoms that allow us to celebrate ethnic heritages, civic professions, and cultural milestones. Neglecting to recognize these sacrifices could unintentionally diminish the importance and overlook the contributions of veterans and military families in our community. Third, religious freedom, the cornerstone of America. The United States was founded on the principle of freedom of religion, a right protected by our First Amendment and central to our national identity. Recognizing Religious Freedom Day, January 16th, or offering a general acknowledgement of this principle reinforces the idea that all residents, regardless of faith, have a protected and respected place in our community. The recognition also supports the broader intent of the calendar to affirm the dignity and the value of every person, including those whose identity is shaped by faith. A recognition calendar that celebrates professional excellence, ethnic heritage, and public service should also affirm the bedrock principles and sacrifices that are made of those recognitions possible. The American and Texas Heritage Observances acknowledges to the military sacrifice and recognition of religious freedom. So my recommendation is that we add January 16th, Religious Freedom Day, that's a constitutional foundation. March 2nd, Texas Independence Day, to honor our state heritage. The last Monday of May, Memorial Day, for those that died for our freedoms. July 4th, Independence Day, our National Heritage Day, and September 17th, Constitutional Day. That's our foundational and legal heritage.
Thank you. Councilman Reed?
I agree. I appreciate you saying that. Just for the record, 4th of July and Memorial Day, even though they're already recognized city holidays. So I think that's why they weren't on the calendar. So, and one addition I want to do is Military Appreciation Month for the month of May. So I applaud and appreciate your recognition of that.
Councilwoman?
Thank you, Stacy. I appreciate that. I agree with everything that my fellow council members have said. I would also make sure that we have New Year's Day, Washington's birthday, Memorial Day, Independence Day, Labor Day, Columbus Day, Thanksgiving Day, and Christmas Day, which are also, these are federal holidays, and I think it would be nice to be able to have an acknowledgement and a graphic. And I just really want to reiterate, I've been getting a lot of bad information about the, the parade and the proclamations, and this, I just want to make sure that everybody out in the community knows that this is only a social media post.
That's correct.
Nothing more.
That
And
is
I think
correct.
that it's really important that everybody understands that just because you read something on the internet or on an email someone sends you doesn't make it true. So this is only a graphic, only a
That is
social media
correct.
post. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilman Neal?
I just have a few questions, either to council or staff. And I know this is just a public acknowledgement, but my question becomes, how do we decide what gets acknowledged, or how do we get on the post? Because obviously, there's hundreds of other
There are.
possibilities that we could be adding to this calendar. So how do we get other acknowledgements or posts? It seems that we're going down sort of a slippery slope here with an almost unlimited number of
That is correct. There's
this
an
month and that
unlimited
month. So
number of possibilities.
I'm just
and-
wondering what's the process or mechanism by which we acknowledge something? Or do we have,
Well,
whether it's Adopt a Dog Month or whatever, if somebody's passionate, how would they get onto this calendar or posting or?
Right now, this is the city council calendar and so you're creating this criteria that we're going to move forward with.
It just seems to me that we're bound to leave out some group or some organization, and I want to be inclusive as much as we possibly can. So I don't know that this is all encompassing, and so I'm somewhat dissuaded by it. But I understand the general thoughts and ideas behind it, which are reasonable. I just have to question where does it all stop? How do we? Because I just feel like we're going to be back and forth visiting this again because some group wants to have something added, and that's fine, but just, it takes a lot of time and effort.
Thank you. So, to your point, I sort of see this as being backyard chicken month. Where's that? Because it's going to get to a point where how much do you include? Every day could be a day for something. I mean, just Google every day and we find things. But I think at the end of the day, what the council has to look at is what we're doing creating division or unity? I'm not answering that question, but that's the question that keeps circling in my mind. And as one of the speakers said, there were probably 60 to 100 things that could be added that are not on this list. And you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. Who are we going to offend? As innocent as things are we going to offend somebody by including one group or one recognition, I should say, versus not including some other recognition? So, I mean, the only way that I know is that everybody writes down everything they want to see recognized, and now we're going to have a full-time social media manager, that's another staff position, just to make the post about that every day. I mean, that's really what it could grow to. I'm not sure if that's what council wants or not, but I think that's possible.
So I just want to make sure Memorial Day is also included. But to that comment, I will say, I think you can take this and you can think of the absolute worst case scenario and say it's going to cost all this kind of money. But I want to go back to reality of what actually occurred when we took the first step to try and be inclusive, which was the first multicultural event. And I think everybody on this dais had expressed how amazing and incredible and what a success it was and how we want to continue doing it and we want to continue to invest more money. And the argument that was proposed at that time was the same argument that's being brought up today, which is, to what extent do we stop? Are we going to be requested to have all kinds of people come and celebrate every single thing? But the reality is that that never became a problem. And so I think we would be wrong to say, well, we're not going to include every single thing, so we shouldn't try it all, because when we did, we had great success. And so I would encourage us to allow anecdotal evidence to spearhead this discussion and allow us to recognize that that may not even be an issue. And we should at least try our very best to try and have our own calendars. The state has done it, the federal government has done it, cities across the nation have done it, and none of them have had any issues. And so why would we be any different? So I'll leave it there.
Thank you. Councilwoman, any comment? Councilman Reed?
Yeah, and again, to Councilwoman Villafranca's point, all those holidays are already considered city holidays. That's why they weren't on the calendar. I don't want this to become Hallmark. I noticed something today because it applies to my wife. Today is Short People's Day. You know, we're not going to get into that minutia. What we're looking at, there's some broad national calendars, and I believe that's where this information was derived from.
That is correct.
And-
State and national.
Yeah, utilize that, okay? We don't need to get into, it's hot dog day or whatever the case, cotton candy day. That's just going way down a rabbit hole.
But I like hot dogs.
You know what? Well,
I
you
like
can
hot
sell-
dogs.
You can, hey, I'm not speaking against, you know what? And even if I didn't like hot dogs, I would not argue with your right
It just
to
goes back to my
celebrate
question,
hot
how do I
dogs.
get that on the calendar? What's the process?
Well, I'm going for Old Fat People Day. But to that point, there are certain templates that we can utilize, which was used to create this list, and we can abide by that. The more generally accepted, recognized, and acknowledged events and promotions, Municipal Clerks Week, whatever, that we can utilize, so we don't have to celebrate everything. So I know I'm speak a little much, but that's my point.
Thank you. Councilwoman Villafranca?
Thank you. So on March 18th, when our Councilman Reed asked for this future agenda item, he was very clear and asked that it be based on national and/or state calendars. So I think that would basically covers everything, and that is basically what the template would be, which would avoid adding National Hot Dog Day and National Short People Day or whatever other events you think. So I think that if we are able to stick to that, I think that we would be doing well. Thank you.
Councilman Neal? Okay. So I want to make sure that we are giving Stacy direction here. I'm not sure that we have clear direction. Is council's intent to move forward with what has been presented here, or are there additions that you would like to make? Because you read a long list. You're not in agreement with this. So
I want the list as it is presented to us when we take a vote. As the list is presented to us to take a vote on, I would like it to be full and complete, to add all in, including the Veterans Day, the Memorial Day, July 4th. I want it to be full and complete as we vote on it.
I would agree with that.
Okay. Then,
I have those notes. Thank you.
okay.
Yeah.
So if you can compile that and maybe resubmit to council so we can study that further, make sure that the appropriate things are included and that nothing is glaringly obviously omitted.
I'd be happy to.
Okay. With that, I'm going to go ahead and recess now because we have to take a picture in 10 minutes and then we have reception in the lobby. So we will continue with item C4 after our regular council meeting is complete.